Hi, I'm Pete Kalinski. Welcome back to Digging Detroit. Today we have two very special guests on our show. We have Karen Hudson Samuels, and we also have a guest who is probably familiar to a lot of you, Amyre Makupson.
Hey Pete, good to be here.
Glad to have you guys here. Now, today we are in the studios of a very unique place, a very special place in Detroit's history. This is the studio of WGPR TV. Now, Karen, can you talk to us a little bit about WGPR and why is this studio so special?
Right here on September 29th, 1975, that the station went on the air as the first African-American owned and operated television station in the country. Up until 1975, there were no black-owned TV stations in the country. And so Dr. Banks was the station owner, and he was the one who came up with the idea of getting into broadcast television. At that point, he had already purchased earlier WGPR Radio, the first African-American owned FM station in Michigan, 107.5. So not only was this a unique place for television, but one of the few places where you had TV and radio under the same roof, operating together.
Who is Dr. Banks?
Boy, that's a big question. That's a big question. I mean, his granddaughter has written a book about him called A Legacy of Dreams, talking about Dr. Banks. And Dr. Banks was a lawyer, he was a minister, he was a businessman. These are the things that he had achieved before he got into broadcasting. He started a fraternal order called the International Free and Accepted Modern Masons and Eastern Stars. And so he was, in some respects, for his time, very much a Dan Gilbert of his time. He owned property. The way that part of the purchase of this station was negotiated was a sale of some property he owned in downtown Detroit, around Campus Martius. So he was someone who achieved a great deal in his life, and he was the son of a sharecropper.
Dr. Banks had a great career. He was extremely creative. He was very concerned about the conditions of the African American community, high poverty rates, racism, segregation. He decided that early on that it's important for people to participate in defining themselves, that it's a weakness to have other people define you. And a lot of Americans get their information from the media. And so he felt that integrating the media was the highest priority. So despite the fact that he was a lawyer and had a good legal practice, and he owned a lot of real estate coming out of the Depression where he bought cheap and sold high and leased a lot of properties and so on, he decided that he could make the maximum contribution by desegregating the media.
And Amyre, she is the very first anchor person.
Can you tell us about that, Amyre?
I did have a friend who was involved here who suggested me, and so I was lucky enough to be chosen to be in that spot. I pretty much all my life known what I wanted to do. I had 4 or 5 ideas and kind of whittled them down, but that was definitely one of them, and I felt like I was the luckiest person in the world. I had died and gone to heaven, and it was a wonderful experience. You know, a lot of times there are many people who are as good or better. It's the person who's fortunate enough to get the shot to do it, and then you can prove later that you were the right pick. But it was just wonderful. The people were wonderful. The opportunity was second to none. It was just something that it was a springboard that so many people, their lives came off of this. And it just is such a very, very important part of our own personal histories as well.
I am quintessential Detroit. I was born at Henry Ford Hospital. I graduated from Henry Ford High School, and my dad worked for Ford Motors. So it doesn't get more Detroit than me. Out of University of Detroit, I was a communications major, and I needed an internship. And here was WGPR.
The station did some nice things, but probably the greatest thing they did was the role that they played in developing so many people's careers, you know.
I was fresh out of college, graduated from Wayne State, in June of '79 and was looking for a job. And my mom worked with, and she was a social worker for the Detroit Public Schools. And she worked with a relative of Mr. Scruggs, who worked here at WGPR. And he had mentioned to her that they were looking for some people in the news department. So my mom said to call the station and ask for Karen Hudson or Joe Spencer. And so that's what I did. And Karen and Joe scheduled an interview.
But I came in under Dr. Banks, and I got the incoming lecture from him when I came in the first time, which was great. I mean, basically, he was a great guy. I always liked him.
The revelation that once you have an experience, you can now call it part of your life and what you do. And that's what we did for a whole lot of people. Gave them that first chance to be on a camera, to tell a story, you know, to host a show, to shoot a film story, a videotape story.
Well, it was basically, we consider this a training facility for minority candidates for broadcast. And he said, and so we consider this a teaching facility. And I kind of took that to heart along the way, and I always maintained that even when I came back, we were the same way.
It was quite an extensive interview, and I was real nervous, and I didn't know how well I did. But shortly after that, I got a call, and they said they wanted to bring me aboard. And it changed my life. It really did.
You know what? There is probably not a station in this market that doesn't have someone behind the scenes who worked at the station. We had Mayor Duggan here to announce the fact that we're going to get a Michigan historical marker for the station, for the property. One of his media services people who was on hand setting up as your people are setting up, she used to work at WGPR. I'm thinking, Duggan, did you know that your media services people got their start here?
There are tons of people, you don't know their names, but they got their start here. And we all helped each other. We learned together, and we did a lot of things. Many have been tremendous successes. You just don't know who they are. Production and directors and writers and all kinds of people.
NAACP, they got sued by the White Citizens Council. I believe it was in Alabama, and they lost the suit. And they had to come up with a $3 million judgment. And they had like 9 or 10 days to do it or something, and they were literally about to go out of business. My first step was to go to WGPR, and I think Jim Panicus back then. NAACP's in trouble. I need to get some airtime. I want to do a telethon. He's like, telethon? He's like, give me 10 grand. All he cares, give me 10 grand. I don't have no 10 grand. He said, well, if you want to do a telethon, you're going to pay me 10 grand. I said, I'll tell you what, give me the contract then. I said, if you give me the contract, I'll figure out how to get the 10 grand. He said, okay, I'll do that. So he gave me the contract. I think we called Mayor Young. I think we called him, and he said, well, if y'all do it, damn it, I'll be there. So that was good. So then we could kind of say, well, we got the mayor, and we got this, and we got this, and we got this.
While I was here, Joe Spencer tapped me and asked me to help produce a TV show called Something Special featuring Jim Ingram. A lot of people would probably remember him from drumbeat commentary on the radio. And so we created the TV show Something Special. And I think one of the real cool things about it was now when you look at like the Jimmy Fallons and back a little bit, and they did the man on the street interviews. That's what we started with Something Special. We had a big screen that came up, and we would interview people on the street, and it was like just, we were a trendsetter.
But the bottom line is, we put 5,000 people in Cobo Hall that night in the Riverview room. And I'll never forget it as long as I live.
As assignment editor, I'm responsible for sending our reporters at Channel 4 on the stories that we cover. And I'm responsible for really knowing what those stories are about, have some knowledge of why this is a story. And that all began here. I learned what news is. I learned how to verify information, that the information is true that you're getting in. Just because someone calls you and tells you something doesn't mean it's necessarily true. The contacts that I've made over the years started right here at WGPR. So when I call people trying to confirm information or trying to set up interviews that would complete a story, they know who I am because of my relationship that I've had over the years with WGPR. In many cases, the first time they met me and developed a trust with me was here at WGPR.
When I came here, it was like, I got professionals all around me. Now, all these people, they don't really know, you know what I mean? But it took time for me to say, hey, it's okay if they don't know. Teach them what you know, and some of them will end up knowing more than you will, you know, and that is the case, you know, because there was another thing, the good thing about this station, which added to my depth in my career. As a director for Channel 4, you weren't allowed to touch cameras or adjust lights or handle the microphones or do the switcher. You weren't allowed to do that. The only thing you could do is plan a show and sit there and tell people what to do, okay? And coming here, I was able to do everything, which broadened my depth, you know, in terms of just shooting, you know, actually doing the camera, going out in the field to do production, just every aspect of the production process, including writing, because I didn't do any writing there at Channel 4. So, you know, this was a very, very good experience for me, even though I was a Mr. Know-it-all when I first came here.
Now, this is what's especially interesting and important is GPR was an independent station. They weren't part of an ABC, CBS, NBC, or they didn't have Fox at the time. So that meant that the news and entertainment programs all had to be locally produced. Along the way, they did have syndicated programs, they purchased movies, but certainly there were years in which, you know, from starting in the morning, going 24 hours a day, that was all originally produced programming.
Wow, that's an exception.
That is an exception.
For the time.
It's exception for the time, and I think probably there are not a lot of stations that do that now.
Well, I was Amyre Porter at the time.
Okay.
And I had this wonderful talk show called Porterhouse. And they said, you got your hour. And I'm like, what?
An hour?
An hour a day. Now I'm figuring I can talk to a tree for an hour. So, I got this. I would stop people off the street. I'd go into restaurants and get owners. I'd go to city council. I'd go to business. Anybody I could think of, I said, you scuba dive? Come on in, we're going to talk about it. I would get anybody I could find, and we just talk. And for a while, we had a live studio audience, which also helps because you can go to questions and stuff like that. But then I understood for the first time in my life how long an hour is. That got to be crazy. But we had that for a while, and then we kind of shortened it a little bit. But that was one of the programs as well.
So Sean Robinson had a talk show, Strictly Speaking. We had Gospel Time, which was a gospel show.
Horse races.
Horse racing was done here. We also had a sports program, just a whole sports program. Bill Humphreys hosted. And in the studio space we're in now, there was also on the weekend live wrestling matches.
And the wrestlers would come in and do the show and so on and so forth. We had the Sheik out here who really owned the wrestling promotion company. And the Sheik was pretty sore at this fellow that came in, really sore at him, because he had missed a couple of shows, these road shows, these shows that have sponsored by clubs, like the, like high school or whatever, and he hadn't shown up. And he came in, and he must have had 3 or 4 days growth of beard. His eyes were bloodshot. He did not look too good. He had been on a binge, is the best way to put it. Sheik grabbed him right by the shoulders, slammed him into the wall. Bam! Right into the wall. And the wall was just the board there. Wham! Slammed him again. His head rocked back, and it punched a hole right in the wall there. Wilbert Scruggs was so doggone mad the next day, Sheik broke up his wall right across from his door to his office.
We went to the Arab American Museum to ask if they could verify any other stations that were doing Arab language programming at the time. They said they couldn't find it. Go with it. You were first.
Wow.
So we had Arab language programming. So the range of entertainment was very broad.
Movies.
And movies. We had all-night movies.
Right.
And I think
I remember the all-night movies.
Movies all night long.
one of the things that they did was the sale of items on the air. So you could purchase a vacuum cleaner or some other kind of item, and you just call in, and this was before QVC.
Yeah.
You could buy items that were in between the movie segments. It was just an amazing place to work at the time. It was bustling, dynamic energy, and because we also had the radio station, we also had a lot of recording artists, famous recording artists, who would come through the station often.
The station was a force in this market. And so if you were doing something or you needed to promote something and you wanted to reach the African American community, you needed to come here. And so the promoters knew that. And so those were the ones that kind of managed it. And so they were pushing people to come here and be on camera and be heard. So I think that's what it was all about.
I mean, it's an entertainment conglomerate, really. But what does this have? What can you say about GPR for Detroit in the 70s and the 80s?
Well, everybody knows about Fago and Sanders and Better Made and the Big Three and all of that, and they're wonderful. Not taking anything from, and Motown, of course. But we were very significant in terms of the broadcast industry, what we did, what we created, who we were, who we involved, and it's a story that's just not told. Now, we didn't perhaps have the maybe we didn't preserve enough, maybe we didn't talk enough, maybe we didn't talk loudly enough, which is why we're so grateful for you to be interested and help us tell this story, because some of us, the original people, you get old, you get a little tired, you kind of fall off pace. We don't want this to die. We were a major part of Detroit in terms of its television industry, and it's a story that has to be told, has to be preserved, has to be handed on, and it's one that we talk about with pride and dignity and quality, and we think we added to the growth of Detroit in this arena that perhaps nobody else added in.
If one does an adequate assessment of the station, one would note that it had several extremely positive impacts. He brought in people, had them trained here, got their initial experiences there 2 or 3 years, and often they moved on to other stations which had heretofore said they couldn't find qualified people. They didn't have that excuse anymore. So this became a channel for getting in people, training them, and having them move on, and desegregating TV and radio nationwide.
For particular young minority journalism students, this was the place to be. It really was, and for not only reporters but for photographers. We've had so many people that have gone on to have careers in long-lasting careers in broadcasting.
There was a cultural impact, social and political, and on the entertainment side, the Scene was the most popular dance show in Detroit. High school students would line up either to come be on the Scene or race home to see their friends on the Scene. Very popular program. And a lot of recording artists, Stevie Wonder, big-time recording artists would come, Prince would come to appear on the Scene. Then on the social side, we covered stories in the community that may have not been picked up by the other stations. We also covered a lot of international news at the time, because in the 70s, in Africa in particular, there were a lot of countries earning independence, and we would cover those global stories, which wasn't always done. So we had that kind of influence and impact. And GPR was the first station in this market to be on TV 24 hours.
Really?
The other stations went off the air. Star Spangled Banner would play.
Remember that?
We've come to the Marine Corps. We've come to the end of another broadcast day. Remember that sign off?
Oh, yeah.
Boy, you tell our age. That was a sign off, and GPR was the first one to stayed on the air 24 hours. All night movies was one of those factors. Also, we were the first station to use videotape, electronic news gathering, to go out and cover stories in the city. At that time, stations were still using film when the reporters went out.
Shoot it, develop it.
Shoot it, develop it. And so they would wonder, people go out, reporters, well, how did y'all get, you're bouncing around, you don't have a big news staff, but you're everywhere, and you get on the air at the same time with us, and you've got as many stories. It's like, we've cut a lot of time out of the production of each story with electronic editing and filming.
A black television station was a big deal, so, and obviously us being with a mobile truck, I mean, it was just kind of like a no-brainer to kind of get together. I don't know if I want to go into history, how Roller Funk started, because that's a whole story in itself. But we started a roller skating show. It was kind of like I said, it was like a Soul Train, but everybody was on roller skates. But we took 100 skaters to Toronto on buses, and we fed them for a week, and we shot a whole season in Toronto in a week. So we literally would edit the show on like Saturday morning, and we would finish editing probably around 2 o'clock. And I think we went on at 6 or 6. I think we went on at 6 o'clock or something. And we would drive the show down to here. I mean, nobody does that anymore. We would drive the show down, literally run into the control room and put the show in the thing.
What is the Historical Society? What are you hoping to do?
We thought we would just have a big reunion and bring all the people together, and then we realized this is history. We were very young at the time. We knew it was the first African-American owned TV station, but our focus was on doing a good job and getting to that next step. And so upon reflection, we said, okay, we've got to tell this history. And that began the process that now, come 2016, we partnered with the Detroit Historical Museum to have a exhibit in their community gallery on the history of the station, the founders, some of the icons. And then our goal is to take that exhibit and transfer it here to these studios and expand it and really make a very dynamic museum. We've learned so much. Gathering in the information is very helpful if people they go through their boxes. Boy, gee, you know what, I think I have a bumper sticker. I've got a t-shirt. I've got something, a flyer that said WGPR on it and the iconic butterfly. We would love to have that.
Yeah.
For the
people's pictures of dancing on the scene.
Exactly. Did they dance on the scene? Yeah. Well, we know they dance. We know. We're not going to name names. There's some famous on-air personalities today who dance on the scene, and we're going to try to save that for later. Okay. But yeah, anything of that nature is considered a collectible. At the time, it may have been a promotional item. Now it's an artifact that can tell a story.
Yeah, people are finding pictures and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
And we're starting a crowdfunding campaign. And that's going to be very important. And people, we want them to think about everything they've heard in this history and how to preserve it and the legacy, and to donate generously.
Thank you both very much for showing up here and helping us out here on Digging Detroit. And you know what? Anything that we can do to help, just let us know.
You're so kind. We appreciate it. We appreciate you having us here and offering to help, and know that you will, and with your exposure. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. This is a great story.
Thank you.
Great place.